how do you make sense of some of the headlines that are going on? Are countries just kind of figuring out deals, and is, I don't know, extra production, extra exploration underway?
So great to be back. Thanks for having me. What a year it has been. If you had told me at the start of 2025 that rare earths would become the most powerful currency in negotiation, in reforming our geopolitical alliances, I wouldn't have believed it. You know, what we've really seen this year, and remember around the APEC summit, there were the third round of negotiations to restore access to rare earths. So we saw them in London, we saw them in Geneva, and then we saw them in South Korea. Since then, the US government has really done two things. You've seen both that acceleration of domestic efforts with the Vulcan deal for rare earths to mine and process those rare earths and get some permanent magnets, but you've also seen a proliferation of the continued international efforts. So most recently, you saw during MBS's state visit from Saudi Arabia that the U.S. Department of War agreed to become a 49% shareholder in a refinery there. And what's really important is when you look at the spectrum of rare earths, we are continuing to drill into two things. Those heavy rare earths, right? Because here in the U.S., we have the second biggest producing rare earths mine in the world. However, they are pretty lightly endowed on the heavy rare earths. And we know that Saudi has bigger deposits of those. The second thing is we're really trying to build our permanent magnet manufacturing capabilities. We do not want to be held hostage any longer than we have to.
Yeah, I was going to say too late. I talked to Gracelin automotive executives a lot in my side gig here, and they have expressed real concern with the idea that we would ever process rare earth materials, that we would ever refine rare earth materials in the U.S., because a lot of these men and women who work for car makers have toured the plants in China and say, like, I never want to go back there again. I wouldn't let my family anywhere near there. It's such a dirty and dangerous job that we simply cannot do that in the United States of America. What do you think about that?
I don't think we have a choice, quite frankly. And I'm originally from Detroit. I love our auto manufacturers. But at the end of the day, it was the auto manufacturers that stopped manufacturing in May when they had a supply chain disruption. So what we know is that, having a close to home or at home supply chain is no longer an option. What I would also say to you is challenge the notion.
But what is the process like? Walk us through the process. What makes it so dangerous, so dirty? And by the way, if I have a vote, they're not doing it in New York, not in my backyard. So I don't know where it's going to be. Certainly
not in your backyard. I would probably agree with that in New York. Now, here's the thing. You've got to mine those rare earths, and then the process of separation is very pollution intensive. You're talking about air pollution, wastewater, waste gases, et cetera, right? It is messy. But what we also know is that the Chinese way of doing it is not the cleanest way of doing it. Mining and processing today is much cleaner than it was 20 years ago. So when we look at, I was out at MP Materials Mountain Pass Mine, one of the really fascinating things is obviously this mine is in a desert. You have a lot of tension, particularly with the frequency of, droughts and wildfires on water. They have a completely closed loop water system that actually keeps all of that water within the mine. And again, that's not commonplace in China. So we're actually learning how to innovate and do it cleaner and better than the Chinese have ever been able to.
So in the land grab, if you will, when it comes to critical minerals, I mean, where is everybody at this point? I thought I recently saw a story about just how much the U.S. has progressed in this area in terms of lining up deals.
Absolutely. The U.S. has made a lot of progress. So I want to point to the fact that when we look at some of the bilateral agreements and deals that we've signed this year, you've seen these agreements being made and signed in the context of Japan, Australia, Saudi Arabia. You're seeing DFC financing, our U.S. government financing going to Brazil. Now, we're also accelerating our mining production and processing here at home. So these are all really big steps that we're doing it. Are we going to be self-sufficient? Secretary Bessent said we'll be self-sufficient in 2 years. That's pretty unlikely. We have to remember we're activating a very long-term industry. 10 years from now will look very different. We're also not talking about a huge market. This is a small market. So 2 years is a bit overambitious, given how long the timeline to developing these capabilities is, but we are, this year is way ahead of where we were last year.
Gracelin, as someone from Detroit, you know how important rare earths are in our automotive production chain. Is it possible to engineer them out somehow?
And just got 30 seconds.
Yeah, and we're starting to. I mean, if you look at BMW, they've produced the first engine that doesn't use rare earths, right? But the difference is, we're kind of getting to that nascent level of innovation, but to the point that we don't need them, seatbelts, steering wheels, door panels, that's still quite a ways away.